Welcome to the deep dive. Today we're looking at a source stack that, well, it puts forward this philosophical framework that's incredibly comprehensive. It really challenges, the bedrock of Western thinking about knowledge, time, even self-identity.
Yeah,
And the really fascinating part, it's not just abstract theory. It actually originates from a physical place, a hand-built structure in Kenema, Sierra Leone.
that's exactly right.
Yeah.
We're digging into sources about something called the double transverse transjective quadratic model, delta T22 for short.
Right.
And it's this, well, architecture for cognition, for philosophy, but also for actual practical building. The whole aim is generating a kind of post-colonial future.
Okay.
And our sources, they're very explicit. This model, it pushes back against, quote, solitary subjectivities and techno-determinist abstractions.
Mm-hmm.
Instead, it insists that real knowledge comes from, and there's another quote, a living field where hands, breath, and kinship, never metrics, attest relational truths.
Wow. Okay, so that's our mission today. We need to unpack this. It sounds complex, this delta T22. How does a huge off-grid house in West Africa become like the blueprint for a global shift in thinking?
Yeah.
We really need to get past the jargon, focus on what this means practically, this idea of low-tech humanism, this unique way of using language.
Yeah.
We want to distill it down into something core, something actionable for you listening.
And I think the way to do that is to keep anchoring every abstract term back to the physical reality there in Kenema.
Okay.
Because the, I guess, brilliance of delta T22, according to the sources, is that the theory is the practice. The actual work building, maintaining, living in this structure, that is how truth gets verified.
Right, the proof is in the building, literally.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay, let's start with the core engine then, this delta T22 model. The sources call it a covenantal architecture of cognition, driven by a quadratic rotation that generates, get this, non-auto anthropology.
Yeah, it's a lot.
It really is. So in plain English, what's this rotation supposed to do? What's the goal?
Well, simply put, the rotation is there to make sure knowledge is never just one thing or static. It's always moving. It's a system where four kind of essential dimensions of being human interact. And that interaction creates what they call truth.
Okay.
And when we talk about truth in this kinema context, we mean something that's co-created. It has to be verified by the group's relationship to, well, the divine, the community, memory, and the land itself, all together.
Right, so those four dimensions must be the axes, ultra, extra, meta, and intra. Let's break those down. How do they work together? Maybe start with ultra.
Okay, ultra. That's the spiritual axis. It's grounded in faith. But crucially, it's not just, believing something abstractly. The sources call it aurat praxis.
Praxis meaning practice.
Right, exactly. It's about the tangible, practical application of the sacred. The action of ultra-fighting, making the unseen, the cosmic principle, real in daily embodied activities, like literally mixing the mortar for the building or planting seeds with intention.
So it's taking faith out of the abstract and, putting it into the work itself. Interesting. What about extra?
The extra is the social dimension, relation. Think kinship or distributed authorship. This emphasizes that, well, meaning and knowledge, they just can't be created alone in isolation.
Right.
They need this reciprocal syntax, a shared understanding within the community. If the community as a whole doesn't recognize and affirm something as true, then it doesn't hold. Knowledge is authored and checked by the network, not just one person looking at something.
Distributed authorship. I like that. It suggests truth gets stronger by being shared, tested by the relationships. Okay, next is meta.
Meta, that's the axis of reflection.
Yeah.
It's described as the reflective scaffolding of collective memory. Think of it as a mechanism for, like, time looping, for constantly learning from the past and weaving it into the present structure. This process makes sure that knowledge creation gets denser through what they call ontic respiration, like the community breathing in the past to shape the now. It resists just breaking away from history, what they term a confessional rupture. It's a living, shared memory archive.
Okay, and the last one, intra. The most sort of personal axis.
Intra is intimacy, yeah. And this anchors everything in sensory reality. It's the sensory anchoring in rain scent, tools rhythm, and the intimate somatic knowledge of the land's fatigue.
Somatic meaning, body knowledge.
Exactly. The embodied feeling, the physical understanding you get from working the earth, from being in the place. It's through this intra-axis, the feeling of your breath, the weight of the clay in your hands, that really local specific knowledge gets transmuted, made relevant more broadly.
So the big takeaway from the Delta T22 model seems to be that truth isn't found by just focusing on one thing, like only personal reflection, meta, or only looking at data, which might be a twisted version of intra. It's about the constant balance, rotation, and interaction of all four. Knowledge is co-constituted.
Precisely. Yeah. And again, this isn't just some abstract philosophical diagram. It's rooted deep in Kenema's, quote, covenantal soil. And it's physically embodied in the building itself, the Kenemagorian mansion.
Let's talk about that physical side then. The architecture is the epistemology. That's wild. We're talking a big structure, 3,400 square feet, 14-foot-high walls, completely off-grid. And this mansion, it's not just shelter. It's an active, deterritorialized epistemic engine.
Yeah, the materiality is absolutely key. Those thick clay walls, for instance, they naturally keep the inside cool, which in turn fosters a certain kind of focus, a collective way of working and thinking.
Ah,
And the acoustics in the central courtyard, they're apparently engineered to support chanting and group discussion, making it the literal space where extra, relation, and meta reflection actually happen.
well.
It's designed to make distributed authorship possible.
So how does the actual act of building prove the philosophy? The sources use this verb, kinemagorizing.
Right, kinemagorizing.
Yeah.
It's the idea that all real inquiry starts with the specific, with the local. Knowing isn't some mental jump into abstraction. It transjects, it comes directly from the hand tremor of mortar mixing and the soil whisper.
Soil whisper?
Yeah, the intimate feedback you get from the land, from the materials you're working with. The community isn't just building a house. They're building an instrument to verify their way of knowing. The fact that those 14-foot clay walls stand strong, that they endure, that attests to the relational truths, the coherence of their shared work, and their spiritual grounding.
This really does sound like a fundamental break from how the West usually defines objective truth. The Delta T22 model specifically sets itself against, quote, techno-determinist abstractions and datification's sterile metrics.
Oh, it's an absolute rejection of that kind of Western empiricism that's based on, extracting data. The sources are really blunt. They reject techno-determinist semiotics and all surveillance metaphors. Basically, if a truth can only be proven by an algorithm or a chart or some external metric, it's rejected there. Truth has to be felt, built, and lived.
But I have to push back a bit here, based on their own goal of building a future. If you reject all sterile metrics, all datification,
Right.
how do you manage resources effectively? Plan infrastructure, ensure, say, food distribution for more people. Isn't some level of metrics, some kind of spreadsheet logic needed for larger scale organization?
That's a really crucial point. And the Delta T22 response, as presented in the sources, isn't that verification is absent. It's just redefined. Their methods use a kind of triangulation via family ecology spirit. Truth gets verified by what they call lived coherence, not external data points. For them, a metric might give you an isolated piece of information, but lived coherence shows you a sustainable pattern. It's about the whole system working together over time.
So what exactly is lived coherence and how do they check it? How is it verified?
Well, an idea or an action or even a structure is seen as truthful if it endurescapes, if it lasts and sustains across generations.
Endurescapes, okay.
Think of it like making a clay pot. If it holds water and your kids and grandkids can still use it decades later, its design is proven by its endurance, not by some lab test on the clay mixture.
Right.
So here, if an infrastructure plan or a social custom successfully keeps the kinship network strong over time, providing dignity, providing joy,
Yeah.
then it's considered coherent. It works.
So the main question, what is known, is always answered by what has been built together. The focus shifts completely from extracting facts to building and maintaining the enduring infrastructure of the community itself. And this is the core of what they're calling low-tech humanism.
Exactly. Low-tech humanism is this recognition that the tools that really last, the simple ones, the ones you can repair by hand, the ones that require people to work together, those are the most humanizing. They kind of necessitate continuous shared labor, which in turn forces that relational attestation we talked about, the Delta T22 model, in action. The technology itself keeps people connected to the soil, to their breath, and to each other.
Okay, so rejecting the datafied subject leads us right into section 2, non-autoanthropology. This seems to be the Delta T22 model's core idea about identity. The main point being, we aren't just singular, isolated selves.
That's the heart of it, yeah.
Yeah.
Non-autoanthropology is this deliberate shift cognitively, architecturally, away from the solitary self. The Cartesian, I think, therefore I am, the isolated individual,
Right.
towards what they call a sacramental we cognition. And this shift happens through relational attestation. Your truth your identity, even your knowledge, it's constantly being verified and affirmed by the shared reality of your kinship network.
This sounds like it completely dismantles the whole Western ethnographic tradition,
Hmm.
which usually relies on a single observer, the ethnographer studying a separate group, the community.
Oh, it's meant as a direct subversion of that. Absolutely. It replaces that isolated ethnographic I with a sacramental we. And this we isn't just a bunch of individuals added together. It's generated by the coherence of everything, kingship ties, ecological give and take, the presence of ancestral spirits. It's what the sources call a transjective manifold.
Okay, hold on. Transjective manifold.
Yeah, it basically means the whole is fundamentally different and maybe more than the sum of its parts. It only exists because of the dynamic interaction, that rotating quadrature or the delta T22 axis.
So how does anyone, scholar, or just anyone new coming in, participate without just imposing their own individual viewpoint?
Through something called kinematic praxis. The idea is that the consciousness of the individual, whether they're a researcher or just part of the community, is expected to kind of dissolve into the collective, into this shared breathing body or corpus.
Okay. How does that work practically?
Well, it means the researcher isn't just standing back, observing, taking notes alone. They're actively involved. They're mixing the mortar, they're planting, they're part of the chant work. It's only by getting your hands dirty, by engaging in this shared labor, that your internal I starts to become part of the communal we.
So if the mind isn't the main place knowledge happens, then the body must be central. Which brings us to tactile cognition.
Right. The sources are really emphatic about this. Knowing isn't brain-bound. It's soil-woven, breath-rooted, hands-caped, and soil-sounded.
Wow, those are powerful terms.
Aren't they? It's low-tech humanism applied straight to how we know things. You don't analyze soil by looking at data in a lab. You analyze it by feeling its texture in your hands, by listening to its story, its soil-sounded truth. Analysis itself becomes the breath-pulsed rhythm of shared labor.
So the physical rhythm of the work, like the steady pounding to make the clay walls, the swing of a hoe, that is the analytical process.
Absolutely. Cognition, thinking, understanding, it literally dances in callous palms and rhythmic chants. And this isn't just, a quaint cultural detail. It's a deliberate way of re-ancestralizing modernity. They're actively building what they call a sovereign creation.
Sovereign creation.
Yeah, a future that weaves together ancestral wisdom and modern needs, but without giving in to colonial ways of measuring things, like efficiency metrics.
This also seems to involve a pretty radical take on education and even time itself. Youth and elders are described as co-custodiating time, and they do this through temporal maintenance of wonder.
Okay.
Unpack that one for us.
Oh, yeah, temporal maintenance of wonder.
Hmm.
It's dense. Temporal suggests something that's both always present, eternal, but also multiple, endlessly unfolding.
Okay.
So it's the constant active work of keeping awe and novelty alive within tradition. It means the elders guide the youth, not by making them memorize facts, but through play-attested rhythms. Learning happens through games, chants, building things together. It's like radical unschooling. Knowledge gets anchored in the body's cadence.
And the wonder part.
That's key. Wonder, which often fades as we get older in industrial societies, is treated here as a vital cognitive resource, something that needs to be actively tended to, renewed daily.
That whole dynamic, the spiritual, the communal, generating reality, brings us to maybe the most complex phrase yet. Flat-fro theological poetics. Can you give us the simpler version first?
Okay, flat-fro theological poetics. At its core, it's the philosophical system connecting intimate, everyday human action, that's the flat part, with cosmic spiritual truth, the theo, through a specifically African lens or epistemology, the afro. It's the language and the worldview that actively re-ancestralizes modernity.
Right. And what does it do? What's its function?
Its function is to bind intimacy, like the feeling of the clay, the smell of the rain after a dry spell, to infinity, the continuous presence of ancestors, the enduring spirit. It's the belief system that ensures kenema's voice, its way of being, lasts beyond colonial ideas of time. They call this theopolitical engineering.
Theopolitical engineering.
Yeah, the conscious, deliberate use of spiritual language, of specific verbs, of chant work, to literally shape reality, to world shape. The mansion itself is like a solid piece of this poetry, where the building proves the enduring covenant of wonder, measured by collective joy, not, say, GDP.
Okay, so the philosophy is huge, but making it work day to day seems to rely heavily on language. The sources talk about etymological hybridization as the engine for sociosemantic repair. This involves creating new words, these verb neologisms, through a disciplined practice called placeless soda.
Right. Placeless soda isn't just making up fun words. It's described as a very disciplined, almost surgical linguistic practice. Forging new words, yes, but grounded very specifically in Mende grammar.
Mende grammar from Sierra Leone.
Exactly, which apparently favors simple verb stems and reduplicate, repeating sounds, like their example, yoki yoko, which means something like continuous, accelerating joy. The new words build on that kind of structure.
Okay, but why? Why this linguistic engineer? What's the purpose?
The goal, explicitly, is to lexi-heal,
Mm.
to mend the linguistic breaks caused by colonialism. Colonialism often pushed down indigenous languages, imposed foreign concepts, foreign ways of thinking embedded in language.
Right.
They recognize that if you're trying to define freedom using the colonizer's dictionary, you're still kind of trapped conceptually. So these new words, they call them semantic microbes.
Semantic microbes, like tiny agents of change.
Exactly, like tiny seeds designed to inoculate the cognitive soil, to prepare the ground for a whole new world sense, one that can actually support and sustain the Delta T22 way of being.
And these words aren't just labels.
No, not at all. They're described as portable praxis tools. They aren't just descriptions. They're simultaneously concepts, feelings, and practical instructions. They're meant to enact their meaning through mouth gesture and body memory.
Mouth gesture and body memory.
Yeah, the idea is when you speak the verb, the shape your mouth makes, the muscle memory invoked, connects you physically to the practice it describes. It moves language from just describing the world to actively creating it. Deterritorializing it, they say.
Okay, let's make this concrete. We need examples of these verb crafts. Let's hear the word, what it means, and how it's used. How about time bend?
Okay, time bend. This is about actively resisting that linear clock-watching time imposed by colonial systems. Conversationally, it means drawing on communal memory, allowing for a more fluid sense of time.
So in practice.
In practice, imagine they're building something and someone brings up how their grandfather solved a similar problem 50 years ago. That's time bending. They're using the past not as dead history, but as an active resource, something that accelerates the joy, the JAOA, of maintaining things in the present.
So memory as a kinetic tool, not just nostalgia. Got it. What about geonavigate?
Geonavigate. This is about embodied skill. Specifically, finding essential resources like water, especially during drought. It's not about reading a satellite map. It's about reading the land itself, the subtle signs, the feel of the ground, the types of plants, the sound of the soil, maybe. The word itself is only proven, only verified, when the community actually finds water and drinks. It's a perfect example of that. Inter-axis knowledge, the sensory stuff, becoming a shared, proven practice.
The verification is built right in.
Yeah.
Okay. And kin triangulate.
Kin triangulate, that's their social verification tool.
Yeah.
It means checking truths against that triad. Family, ecology, spirit.
Right.
So if there's a decision to make, say, about how to use some land,
Right.
it has to be looked at from the perspective of the community's needs, family, the impact on the environment, ecology, and whether it honors their spiritual understanding.
Yeah.
Only when all three align is the decision considered truly kin triangulated, validated.
Makes sense. And then there's soil weave.
Soil weave. This means interlacing your thinking, your cognition, directly with your relationship to the land. Ecological kinship. Thinking about the soil is inseparable from working it, from understanding its intrinsic value. A scholar, for example, soil weaves when they recognize the land isn't just dirt, but maybe has its own voice, what they call geophonic utterance, and they base farming or building decisions on that deep listening, that tactile knowing.
And finally, two verbs connecting faith and the physical world. Ausculpt and hope harden.
Right. Ausculps is about physically shaping faith through tactile wonder. So, for instance, when the builders are mixing the mud for the walls and they chant these neologisms into the mix, they are ausculpting. They're embedding the sacred right into the physical structure, making the spiritual tangible. Hope harden, on the other hand, is about turning aspiration, turning hope into solid stuff, both lexical new words and physical infrastructure. The commitment to keep the off-grid power system running isn't just wishful thinking. It's hope that's been hardened into durable wires, into solar panels, and into the dedicated skills of the community members who maintain it.
It really seems clear that language here is intended to world-shape reality, not just describe it. This intentional creation process leads to what they call a symplastic reality.
Yeah, symplastic, meaning reality is seen as pliable, shapeable through this sociosemantic effort. Language, through the mouth gesture, the body memory tied to these verbs, becomes like a living contract, a covenant. The lexicon isn't just a list of words. It's an active mechanism working to foster what they call a perennial modernity,
Perennial modernity.
meaning a future that's always being actively built and rebuilt, day by day, drawing on the past, rather than something passively received or determined solely by technology.
So if they're using language to literally shape reality, what's the end goal? What kind of future are they aiming for? The sources say it's not a typical utopia, leisure automation, but a prometatopian horizon.
Yeah, Prometopia, it's a really important distinction they make. It's a rejection of that automated, hands-off future. Instead, it's a future defined by hand-built infrastructures and the dignity of the handmade. Hope, in this vision, isn't just a feeling. It's hardened into a roof that actually keeps the rain out, walls that stand strong year after year.
And if the driving force isn't capitalist growth or pure technological efficiency, what powers their progress? They use this acronym JAOA.
JAOA, Joy Accelerated Orientated Acceleration. This is supposedly the real metric of progress within the Delta T22 system. It measures the, increasing joy and efficiency with which the community sustains its core way of life, its covenant.
Interesting combination, joy and efficiency.
Right. The idea is, if the work itself is joyful, if it builds community, then the effort is sustainable. And that allows the system to accelerate ethically. Laughter during shared labor, inclusive participation, that's a velocity, not sterile economic numbers.
Okay, but again, I have to ask about trade-offs. If they're consciously building things by hand, prioritizing the handmade, isn't there an inherent loss of speed, of efficiency? Wouldn't a machine build those walls faster than people chanting and working together? Why choose to sacrifice that speed?
That sacrifice of speed is completely intentional, according to the sources. They argue that machine speed efficiency disconnects the builder from the materials, from the land, and crucially from their obligation to the community. Speed is seen as a capitalist metric. Joyful endurance, that's the prometatopian metric.
Okay.
Their goal isn't some static, finished utopia. It's sempiternal maintenance.
Sempiternal, meaning endless. So the endless, joyful work of just keeping things going. Upkeep.
Exactly. And that's the core of their operational eschatology. Eschatology usually means the study of end times, right?
Right, like apocalypse or final judgment.
But here, it's operational. The ultimate good, the end-time vision, is found in the continuous, dedicated maintenance of the present, not some big future event. Progress is redefined as deepening the community's ability for joyful upkeep, maintaining the mansion, the relationships, the land, the spiritual covenant, day in, day out.
This framework isn't just about building physical walls, though. It's also about healing, specifically the ruptures from the past, from colonialism. The Delta T22 model apparently includes a method for communal healing called exopsychoanalysis.
Yeah, exopsychoanalysis. It's designed as a collective social therapy. It deliberately steps away from framing trauma as just an individual clinical problem. Instead, it uses that linguistic tool, play-Lesotho liberation, creating and sharing new verbs within communal settings, like verb therapy sessions, to essentially restory trauma.
Restoring it. How?
By shifting the pain from being a private burden into becoming contextual resilience. Strength that's woven into the social fabric, into the kintext.
This sounds like one of the most powerful parts of the whole model. Can you describe the actual rituals? How does this collective therapy work in practice, tangibly?
The methods described are really grounded, very ecological and aesthetic. One practice is the trauma compost ceremony. Instead of just reliving painful memories internally, the community comes together. They articulate these memories collectively, not to assign blame, but to acknowledge the shared cost, the history.
Okay.
And then these painful memories are symbolically, sometimes even materially, put into the compost heap, which will eventually fertilize the community's gardens. They're literally bioconverting the memory of pain into future sustenance, into growth.
Wow. Turning suffering into actual useful infrastructure, cultural and ecological. That's a huge leap from typical Western therapy models.
It connects right back to that intra-axis, the sensory and the soil weave idea, and there's more. They also use pain pattern textile weaving. This involves aestheticizing collective suffering. The community works together to translate shared grievances or historical wounds, like maybe forced displacement or a famine, into intricate, often beautiful patterns in woven textiles. The act of creating beauty from the memory allows them to carry it without being constantly crushed by it. It transforms suffering into a durable, shared cultural design.
Ensuring personal stories is also formalized, right? The
Yeah.
witness weave.
That's right. The witness weave is described as a ritualized way of collectivizing testimony. It's explicitly designed to strengthen the social fabric through shared vulnerability. When one person shares a trauma, The community responds, not with pity, but by weaving connections showing how their own lives or the collective history resonates with that pain. It's like metaphorically weaving that single frayed thread of suffering back into a stronger, more resilient communal tapestry.
And even grief itself is given a function through the tear cycle.
The tear cycle, yeah. It's a beautifully grounded ritual, as described. Grief isn't seen as wasted emotion. Tears, symbolizing intense grief, are sometimes literally, sometimes symbolically, collected. And then they're used to water specific plants, maybe medicinal herbs, or plants with spiritual significance.
So, hydrating grief into growth.
Exactly. It's like a hydrological understanding of grief.
Yeah.
Pain involves wetness, tears, and that moisture can lead to new growth. It ensures the emotional cost of living gets recycled back into the community's life-giving ecology. And this whole approach reshapes justice, too. It becomes justice weaves restitution into kinship networks. The goal is reinforcing relationships, not just isolated punishment or judgment.
All of this, the complex architecture, the language creation, these intricate healing practices, it all seems to be held together by one core idea, the covenant of wonder.
The covenant of wonder is the spiritual bedrock, yes. But crucially, it has to be kept alive through tangible engagement with the world. It's maintained through the breath-pulsed rhythm of work and the soil-sounded truth of daily practice, that constant act of kinemagorizing.
So the small things matter.
Immensely. The microphenomenology, as the sources put it, the scent of rain on dry earth, the thud of a tool hitting wood, the background hum of the forest. These aren't just background noise. They are the intimate sensory anchors that ground the entire philosophy in lived reality. They perpetually validate the project from within, replacing any need for external, metric-based validation.
Okay, we've covered the foundation, the identity, the language, the application. Let's try to map the overall trajectory, the developmental flow they describe. It starts, they say, with protogenesis.
Protogenesis, that's the very beginning, the initial impulse, the why.
Yeah.
And it's rooted right there in the intimate scale, the, quote, hand tremor and the soil whisper of the laterite plains in Kenema. It's that moment when the desire for a sovereign future moves from just thought into the first concrete action, mixing the first mud, laying the first brick. The desire to make this covenant is literally forged in the dust, which ensures the whole project starts grounded in all four axes, ultra, extra, meta, intra, right from the get-go.
And from that initial spark, it moves into chronogenesis.
Chronogenesis, this is that prometa-utopian time binding we talked about. It's where the enduring strength of ancestral traditions gets actively woven into accelerating the community's development now. It's a process of joy insertion, as they call it, into the rupture left by colonialism, creating this perennial modernity, a modernity that's actively hand-forged in the present, day by day.
Okay.
This timescape refuses linear colonial time or even Western ideas of the future. It's defined by that covenant of maintenance, kept alive through things like floor prayer and rafter sanctifying. It's a time that's alive, responsive to the community, not just a clock ticking.
And applying this unique sense of time and space leads to the third stage, ontological engineering, which sounds like reality prototyping, very deliberately shaping their world.
Exactly. Ontological engineering is where the lexicon that plays Lesotho verbs meets the architecture, the delta T22 structure to intentionally world shape. This happens through, quote, theopolitical application of joy grizz and bliss-forged institutions.
Okay.
Campbell. Well, using a neologism like infrastruct, which means something like to verbify hope when planning the water system, or using geopedagogies to earth-form intelligence to guide how kids learn agriculture. The entire system is presented as reality prototyping, building sovereign institutions that are inherently resilient because they're built on joy, kinship, and deep ecological responsibility.
And this whole journey, protogenesis, chronogenesis, ontological engineering, it all leads towards an ultimate shift they call afrometanoia.
Afrometanoia, yeah, that represents the fundamental turnaround. A deep shift in consciousness. It's the state of being they aim for, achieved through this sovereign creation, not just through criticizing the West. It's the lived, embodied understanding that the scholar's hand is indistinguishable from the mason's.
Meaning the thinking and the doing are one.
Essentially, yes. The knowledge generated in discussion in the courtyard is the same knowledge that built the physical walls. Theory and practice are completely fused.
So afrometanoia is like the operational proof that the whole model works, verified by the community actually thriving, enduring.
It's exactly that. It's the operational realization that the covenant of wonder isn't just a nice idea. It's maintained in the sempiternal upkeep of every single part, the roof, the walls, the water pipes, the kinship network. It's this state of perpetual, joyful, enduring being, realized through the daily, hands-on practice of kinemagorizing a world into being. It's the deep acceptance that real progress isn't about spectacle or disruption, but about resilient, dedicated maintenance. Hashtag tag outro. So after going through all that, what is this entire trajectory, starting from the soil in Kenema and aiming for Afro-metanoia? What does it really mean for you listening? Well, the Delta T22 model offers this, well, radical alternative to our usual reliance on abstraction. It redefines technology as low-tech humanism. It insists language isn't just for describing, but a kinetic tool for repair, sociosemantic repair. And it suggests the future isn't some endpoint, but simply the dedicated, joyful maintenance of the present. It really offers a profound counterstory to the narratives championing speed, digital abstraction, and purely individual achievement as the only ways forward. Instead, it argues that truth has to be verified by the strength of our relationships, the endurance of what we build together, and the pulse of the living world around us.
We started off asking how a hand-built house could challenge Western ways of knowing. And the answer, it seems, lies in insisting on coherence that's verified through the hands, through lived experience. So, if our current models heavily reliant on data, on sterile metrics, might actually be opposed to this idea of lived coherence, here's a final thought. What immediate hand-based, low-tech action could you take in your own life, starting today, to practice a little bit of this ontological engineering? Maybe find one concrete, tangible, shared activity like tending a small garden, actually repairing something instead of just replacing it. Or maybe just taking the time to really share a story with your family or friends to begin, in their terms, to atone your reality and practice your own small covenant of wonder. Something to think about until the next deep dive.